Have you ever looked into someone's eyes and seen your own hunger reflected back? A hunger so deep it frightens even you. That's where it begins, not in love. Not in lust, but in the abyss between them. The human heart is not drawn to light. It is pulled toward what it does not understand. Mystery is gravity for the soul. The secret to obsession lies not in beauty nor in wealth, but in psychological depth. To awaken that depth in another, you must first awaken it in yourself. A woman does not crave a man who pleases her. She craves a man who disturbs her equilibrium, who stirs the archetype of danger buried within her psyche. The forbidden awakens longing more than affection ever will. The Machiavellian understands this. People worship what they cannot fully possess. Be present yet unattainable. Offer warmth, then withdraw it. Let her mind chase the ghost of your attention. The more she seeks to understand you, the more her unconscious binds her to your mystery. You become not a man but a symbol, a puzzle that her ego cannot leave unsolved. But this method is not cruelty, it is precision. Control does not come from domination, but from emotional calibration. You mirror her desires back to her until she confuses them with destiny. You listen so deeply that her secrets feel safe only in your silence. You ignite her fears of loss, and suddenly your absence becomes unbearable. The Machiavellian lover manipulates not through lies, but through truth strategically revealed. Yet here lies the paradox. To wield such influence, one must face his own inner darkness. You cannot command the shadows of others without taming your own. To make someone obsessed, you must understand why you crave obsession. You must recognize that every heart you conquer is a reflection of your unhealed need for validation, power, or control. The method that enslaves another can also enslave you if you do not walk it consciously. The greatest seducer is not the one who pretends to be light, but the one who stands unshaken in his darkness. For only there, between desire and danger, does true fascination exist. The woman who becomes obsessed with you is not really obsessed with you. She is obsessed with what you awaken within her, the parts of her that even she fears to touch. To master this is to master not women, but the architecture of the human soul. And when you learn to rule that, you no longer need to chase love. Because love, in its most primal and dangerous form, will come chasing you. Have you ever wondered why we are drawn not to the safe but to the dangerous? Why the heart flutters not in the presence of peace, but in the thrill of uncertainty? Beneath every act of attraction lies a paradox, the yearning for connection intertwined with the hunger for chaos. To understand obsession, one must first confront the psychological forces that live beneath consciousness. It is not love that binds people most powerfully. It is the shadow, that secret terrain of our unspoken desires, fears, and fantasies. Every human being carries a darkness within, a constellation of impulses repressed by morality, culture, and fear. This darkness is not evil. It is potential energy. It is the raw, unrefined matter from which passion, ambition, and even creativity are born. What we call dark psychology is simply the study of how this hidden layer influences behavior. When a man learns to recognize and integrate his shadow, he gains an aura that magnetizes others, especially women. Because he has accepted what most deny, he radiates authenticity. He becomes unpredictable, not because he plays games, but because he operates beyond convention. A woman's fascination begins here. The human psyche hungers for wholeness, and the shadow represents everything we suppress in order to appear good, kind, or socially acceptable. When she meets a man who embodies his darkness without shame, something ancient awakens in her, an unconscious desire to merge with the forbidden, to experience through him the emotions she has been conditioned to repress. The union of opposites, her light with his darkness, becomes an archetypal dance that transcends rational attraction. This is not manipulation. It is psychological resonance. The Machiavellian lover does not seduce by deception, but by depth. He listens not merely to her words, but to the tremor beneath them, the hesitation that reveals her hidden longing. He understands that the feminine psyche is both creator and destroyer, nurturing yet chaotic, and he does not attempt to tame it. Instead, he mirrors it. He becomes the mirror through which she confronts her own complexity. When she feels this mirror, her emotional defenses begin to dissolve. She senses that he sees her, not as she presents herself, but as she truly is. In that recognition lies the seed of obsession. For to be seen in one's totality, light and shadow, virtue and sin, is the rarest and most intoxicating experience a human can have. The man who can hold that mirror becomes unforgettable. But here lies the philosophical depth. Before one can awaken this in another, he must first confront it in himself. The unintegrated man who fears his shadow will either suppress it or project it outward, turning attraction into dependency, control, or cruelty. Integration, however, transforms darkness into charisma. It gives weight to your words, stillness to your presence, and mystery to your silence. You no longer seek to impress. You simply exist with full awareness of your inner contradictions. And that awareness is magnetic. Psychologically, obsession arises not from constant stimulation but from tension, the oscillation between fulfillment and frustration. The darkly attuned man understands this instinctively. He knows when to give, when to withdraw, when to let silence speak louder than speech. He does not chase validation, because his validation comes from inner mastery. In his steadiness, a woman feels both safety and danger, the paradox that fuels her emotional fixation. Sexually, this principle manifests as energy polarity. The masculine darkness is not aggression, but gravitational presence, the sense of being fully grounded in one's desire without apology. It is the power of containment, not control, the ability to hold space for her chaos without losing center. In that moment, she surrenders not out of weakness but out of trust that her depths are safe in your steadiness. This is what makes her crave you, not the performance of dominance but the embodiment of it. Philosophically, we might say that every relationship is an alchemical process. Two psyches meet, and in their friction transformation occurs. The darker the material, the greater the potential for change. The man who denies his darkness stagnates in shallow encounters, forever fearing the exposure of his own contradictions. But the man who embraces it can transmute his primal impulses into creative force. He becomes both lover and philosopher, both seducer and sage. This is why attraction often feels like danger. The psyche recognizes transformation and trembles before it. To awaken obsession, therefore, is not to trick someone's emotions but to activate their unconscious longing for wholeness. You become the catalyst, the spark that ignites their internal revolution. It is not about taking power from another, but about revealing to them the power they have denied within themselves. To master this art, you must learn to dance with your own demons, to listen when they whisper, to understand their language, and to channel their energy toward creation instead of destruction. Only then does your presence carry the weight of truth. Only then do your words penetrate deeper than intellect, reaching the visceral layer where desire and fear coexist. So when you look into her eyes, remember this: what she seeks in you is not perfection, but permission, the permission to be fully human, unguarded, and alive. She is not obsessed with you. She is obsessed with the version of herself that awakens in your presence. The darkness you integrate becomes the light that guides others toward their own hidden depths. Embrace it, refine it, and wield it with consciousness. For the man who dares to face his shadow no longer chases love. He becomes the gravity that love cannot escape. Power is a language few dare to speak aloud, yet every act of attraction, every moment of seduction is written in its grammar. We are trained to believe that love is equality, that desire is mutual, and that the purest connection is free of control. But beneath those comforting ideals lies a harder truth. All human connection involves a subtle negotiation of power. Every glance, every touch, every silence is a signal in this psychological game. To deny this is to remain blind to the very forces that shape desire itself. Power is not dominance. It is awareness, an attunement to the currents of influence that flow invisibly between two minds. In this invisible space, attraction either deepens or dies. The one who masters that space does not manipulate through lies, but through presence. Presence itself is a kind of gravity. It bends another's emotional energy toward you without force, without demand. It is not what you say or even what you do. It is what you radiate. The Machiavellian mind understands this instinctively, that control is never seized. It is offered by those who feel magnetized by your composure. A woman does not fall for a man because he overwhelms her. She falls because he awakens something in her that she cannot control, because his energy does not plead for approval. He becomes the unmoving center around which her emotional storm begins to circle. When you hold power correctly, It feels like safety to her and danger at once. She senses that you see her, that you could touch her vulnerability, but you choose restraint. That restraint becomes power. The moment you reveal that you need her validation, that energy collapses. Desire dies where desperation begins. This is why the Machiavellian method demands mastery of self before mastery of others. Power cannot be simulated. It leaks through every gesture, tone, and glance. When a man has not confronted his inner insecurities, his attempt at control becomes aggression. When he has integrated his fear and ego, his stillness becomes irresistible. The essence of seduction, then, is self-possession. To possess another's attention, you must first possess your own. Psychologically, this interplay of power and seduction activates primal circuitry. Human beings, regardless of gender, are drawn to those who can influence emotional states. Think of it as energetic leadership, the ability to direct tension, release, uncertainty, and pleasure like a conductor directing sound. The Machiavellian does not chase emotion. He shapes it. He knows how to hold silence until it becomes unbearable, how to withhold attention until her imagination fills the gap. Scarcity creates value, and emotional scarcity creates longing. The less predictable your affection, the more she invests in understanding you. This is not cruelty. It is rhythm. Life itself thrives on cycles of expansion and contraction, breath, heartbeat, tides. In the same way, power in seduction arises from modulation, not monotony. You give warmth, then distance. You reveal a truth, then retreat into mystery. Each movement deepens her emotional dependency, not because you have deceived her, but because you have orchestrated tension, the tension between knowing and not knowing, possessing and desiring. That tension is the heartbeat of obsession, but philosophically we must go deeper. What is power truly? It is not the ability to bend others to your will. It is the capacity to remain unbent by theirs. When you act from your center, when your emotions are not hijacked by the reactions of others, you become an axis of stability in a world addicted to chaos. People are drawn to what steadies them. In that steadiness lies influence. And this influence, when fused with empathy and awareness, becomes irresistible. There is an erotic dimension to this too. Sexual energy itself is power. It is the life force seeking direction. Most people waste it through projection, fantasy, or attachment. The Machiavellian lover channels it into presence. His desire is sharp, focused, unapologetic, but never needy. It invites surrender because it does not demand it. The woman feels that he could consume her but chooses not to, and that voluntary restraint transforms lust into fascination. This dynamic echoes an ancient truth. Power and love are not opposites. They are complementary forces. Love without power becomes sentimentality. Power without love becomes tyranny. To make someone obsess over you is not to destroy their autonomy, but to awaken their polarity. The dance between yielding and resisting, between losing control and finding themselves in the loss. You become the mirror that reflects her own capacity for surrender, not as submission, but as liberation. Yet the greatest danger in all of this lies in losing the inner balance. If your power becomes performance, it decays into manipulation. True control arises not from pretending to be indifferent, but from actually being whole without another's validation. You must reach the point where her affection, her withdrawal, her confusion, none of it alters your inner state. That is when you become truly magnetic. The less you seek to control, the more influence you command. Psychologically, this is mastery over your emotional archetypes. The lover within you wants to merge. The warrior within you wants to conquer. The sage within you wants to understand. The integration of these three creates a presence that feels both safe and dangerous, tender and unyielding. That paradox is the source of fascination. It is the vibration of life itself, the dance between chaos and order, embodied in a single human being. So when you stand before her, do not speak of power. Be power. Speak through silence. Let your eyes say what words cannot. Let her feel your confidence not as arrogance but as calm inevitability. When she senses that you could walk away at any moment, and yet choose to stay, her mind begins to orbit your will. That is not hypnosis. That is psychological resonance. And remember, the point of power is not to imprison another's freedom, but to awaken it through your strength. To control without force, to influence without deceit, to command without cruelty, That is the art of the true Machiavellian lover. He does not dominate the woman. He dominates the situation within himself. Power without self-awareness corrupts. Power with consciousness transforms. Be the still point in her storm, the place where her chaos finds meaning. That is how influence becomes devotion and desire becomes destiny. We often believe that attraction begins with choice, that we consciously decide who to love, who to desire, who to chase. But the truth is far more unsettling. Most of what we call attraction is an unconscious recognition. It is not you she falls for. It is what you represent, what you mirror back to her deepest unmet needs, the image that her psyche has long been searching for in silence. The human heart is a mirror hall, and obsession is born not from seeing another person clearly, but from seeing oneself refracted in them. Every human being carries within them an invisible portrait, an idealized image of love, safety, danger, or redemption that was shaped long before adulthood. It is crafted by childhood wounds, parental dynamics, and hidden fantasies of connection and power. When we meet someone who reflects that inner image, it feels like fate, but it is really recognition. The psyche says, "This one understands my pattern." The person becomes a vessel for unfinished emotional business. That is why we mistake intensity for intimacy. The Machiavellian understands this dynamic, not to exploit it, but to master it. To mirror another's psyche, you must first learn to read it. Words are the surface layer. Tone, rhythm, and silence reveal the truth beneath. Every gesture, every pause, every avoidance exposes a psychological wound waiting to be acknowledged. Most people listen to respond, but the Machiavellian listens to reveal. He sees not who she pretends to be, but who she is when no one is looking. In that perception, something inside her stirs. She feels seen beyond performance, beyond persona, and once a person feels profoundly seen, they cannot easily walk away from the one who granted them that reflection. This is not manipulation. It is the deepest form of psychological rapport. It is the art of becoming a mirror so precise that another person meets themselves in your gaze. When she looks at you and senses that you understand the part she hides from the world, she begins to link that understanding with emotional safety, even if she cannot articulate why. This is how fascination becomes fixation. Her unconscious believes that through you, she can finally complete something unfinished within herself. But here lies the philosophical irony. The more she projects her inner image onto you, the less she actually sees you. And the more you play that mirror role without awareness, the more you lose your own authenticity. Power in this dance lies in staying conscious, knowing that her attraction is a reflection of her own inner architecture. The Machiavellian doesn't become trapped in the illusion of being adored. He studies the projection and learns from it. He knows when to play the mirror and when to step back, allowing her to experience the tension between illusion and reality. That tension is what keeps her bound, half in fantasy, half in truth. Psychologically, this process is rooted in what the ancients called the anima and animus, the inner feminine within the man, the inner masculine within the woman. When a woman sees a man embody traits her inner masculine archetype lacks, decisiveness, depth, command, creative danger, she experiences a magnetic pull toward him. He appears to complete what her psyche has not yet integrated. Similarly, a man feels drawn to a woman who reflects the emotional or spiritual qualities missing in himself. This is why attraction feels like home and mystery at once. It is the psyche seeking its lost halves through another body. Sexually, this mirroring becomes electric. The body reacts before the mind understands why. In the presence of someone who embodies our unconscious archetypes, the nervous system awakens with both longing and fear. It is as if every suppressed emotion demands expression. The Machiavellian lover does not rush this process. He amplifies it. He knows that obsession grows in the space between satisfaction and yearning. He gives just enough reality to sustain hope, just enough absence to awaken imagination. Every word, every silence becomes a reflection of her internal drama. But this mirror has two sides. While she sees in you her unclaimed emotions, you too are reflecting parts of yourself. Her fascination reveals your own need to be needed, to be admired, to be the center of another's emotional universe. The wise understand that seduction is never one-sided. It is a mutual hypnosis. You cannot hold someone in your psychological web without being entangled in theirs. Thus, mastery requires self-awareness. to know which parts of you are being fed by her obsession and which are being distorted by it. The philosophical depth of this lies in the understanding that relationships are not about completion, but confrontation. Every encounter is a mirror, showing us where we remain divided. The Machiavellian, unlike the naive romantic, does not seek to escape this truth. He embraces it. He knows that every woman who becomes obsessed with him is not simply falling in love. She is undergoing an inner initiation, meeting her own depths through the symbol that he embodies. He becomes not a partner but a catalyst, and in that awareness he transcends mere manipulation. He becomes a mirror that transforms, yet the danger remains. To be a mirror too long is to lose substance. If you live only as a reflection of others' needs, you dissolve into illusion. The true power lies in balance, to reflect another's psyche while remaining anchored in your own, to let her see herself through you, but never mistake her reflection for your identity. This balance is what separates the manipulator from the master, the deceiver from the alchemist. In the end, all obsession is a mirror of the self. The person we cannot stop thinking about is the person who reflects the part of us we cannot face. When you understand this, you stop seeking to control others and start seeking to understand the reflection itself. Every lover becomes a lesson, every fixation, a message from the unconscious calling you toward integration. So when you look into her eyes and feel her desire rising, remember, she is not seeing you, she is seeing herself in you. The question is not how deeply you can make her fall, but how consciously you can make her awaken, and that is the ultimate mastery. Not to possess her body or her mind, but to hold the mirror steady until she recognizes her own reflection and trembles before it. Because the one who learns to master mirrors masters the human soul. The Machiavellian method is not a collection of tricks. It is the refined understanding of human nature stripped of moral illusion. It begins with the recognition that people are governed less by reason and more by emotion, less by truth and more by perception. What drives desire is not honesty but tension, not comfort but contrast. The master of this method does not manipulate through deceit, but through psychological precision. He understands the laws of attraction as one understands the laws of gravity. To influence another person, especially in the realm of desire, you must understand that the human psyche craves both stimulation and uncertainty. Certainty is safety, but safety kills longing. A woman does not obsess over the man who gives her everything she asks for. She obsesses over the one who gives her almost everything, yet holds something back. This withholding, when done consciously, becomes the axis of her fascination. The Machiavellian method lives in this space between presence and absence, between clarity and mystery. It turns emotional unpredictability into art. The first layer of this art is unpredictability. Predictability is emotional death. Once a person can fully predict your reactions, they stop feeling curiosity toward you. Curiosity is the mind's way of saying, there is more here to uncover. The Machiavellian cultivates that sense of more. He knows how to change tempo, to be attentive and distant in rhythm, never fully accessible, never fully gone. His presence is like a shifting landscape. It keeps the psyche awake, and the moment her mind begins to analyze his behavior, the trap of obsession begins to close. But unpredictability alone is not enough. It must be grounded in emotional coherence, a deep consistency of identity. You can be unpredictable in action, but never in essence. Your values, your energy, your purpose must remain immovable. It is the paradox of stability within mystery that fuels obsession. A woman may not know what you'll do next, but she must feel that you know. That calm certainty in yourself creates the magnetic field around which her uncertainty revolves. You become the anchor to her emotional tides. Another layer of this method lies in scarcity. What is abundant loses value. Attention, affection, and approval, when given constantly, lose their psychological potency. The Machiavellian gives strategically. His approval feels earned, not granted. His affection feels like a privilege, not a right. And this scarcity triggers the primal mechanism of desire, the pursuit instinct. When something appears limited, the mind begins to obsess over possessing it. When your energy feels rare, it becomes irresistible. Then there is emotional conditioning, the subtle architecture of how feelings become linked to your presence. Every time you appear after a period of absence, Every time your words strike both pleasure and confusion, every time she feels both exposed and safe around you, you are wiring her nervous system to associate you with emotional intensity. And human beings crave intensity even more than happiness. They will return to what makes them feel deeply, even if it unsettles them. The Machiavellian uses this knowledge not cruelly but consciously to evoke transformation through tension. Philosophically, this method speaks to an eternal truth. Desire is born from contrast. We seek what eludes us. We crave what resists us. We worship what remains beyond full comprehension. The Machiavellian lover embodies this paradox. He is light cloaked in shadow, warmth veiled in restraint. His every action whispers contradiction, and that contradiction becomes his power. To a woman's psyche, he is both danger and sanctuary, both mirror and mystery. She cannot resolve the tension, and so she keeps returning to it. But the deeper mastery lies not in manipulating this dance, but in understanding it. To wield influence without self-awareness is to become enslaved by your own strategies. The Machiavellian method at its highest form is not about control of others. It is about sovereignty over yourself. It is the ability to navigate human emotion without drowning in it, to touch desire without being consumed by it. When you can evoke emotion without attachment, when you can inspire obsession without losing your center, you have transcended the ordinary games of power. At its root, this is a philosophy of consciousness. The unawakened man reacts, the Machiavellian acts. He does not chase attention. He orchestrates it. He does not seduce to feed his ego. He seduces to understand the human condition. He studies the way emotion moves, how it binds, how it liberates. His method is not deception, it is revelation. It exposes the hidden mechanics of desire that most people live unconsciously, allowing him to play with forces that others are enslaved by. To live this way demands discipline, awareness, and detachment. You must learn when to speak and when to let silence do the work, when to approach and when to withdraw, when to reveal truth, and when to let imagination paint its own picture. Each moment becomes a move in an invisible game, not to conquer her, but to awaken her to her own emotional depths. For in the end, it is not victory that defines mastery, but influence with integrity. And so the Machiavellian method is not truly dirty, it only appears so to those who fear their own power. It is the art of channeling darkness consciously, of making the unconscious visible, of wielding the laws of emotion with precision and care. Every pursuit of power, every act of seduction, every strategy of control eventually leads to the same question. And then what? You can make someone desire you. You can create obsession. You can command attention. But if you have not conquered yourself, all of it collapses into emptiness. The final step in this dark psychology is not external domination, but internal sovereignty. The one who truly rules others has first ruled himself. The deeper truth is that every manipulation, every performance of power is ultimately a projection of our own unconscious need. The desire to be desired, the hunger to be chased, the need to be in control, these are the shadows of the self that has not yet faced its own chaos. You can study every Machiavellian technique, you can master every psychological tactic, but until you turn inward, you remain a slave to the very forces you seek to wield. Power without self-awareness is self-destruction disguised as mastery. Philosophically, this is the turning point of transformation. Up to now, the path has been about understanding how the psyche moves, how desire, scarcity, and mystery create emotional gravity. But the true master realizes that this knowledge is not meant merely to control others. It is meant to illuminate yourself. The people you attract, the obsessions you provoke, the chaos you create, these are mirrors of your own inner landscape. If you attract those addicted to drama, it is because your own shadow still craves intensity. If you crave devotion, it is because a part of you has not learned to trust its own worth. Every fixation around you reveals the secret architecture of your psyche. The Machiavellian who becomes conscious of this truth ceases to play the game unconsciously. He stops seducing for validation and begins to embody power as a state of being. He understands that to make another person feel deeply, he must himself be unafraid of depth. To awaken obsession, he must be at peace with stillness. To control desire, he must not be controlled by his own. It is in this paradox that mastery becomes spiritual. In Jungian terms, this is the process of individuation, the integration of all opposing forces within the self. The dark and the light, the animal and the divine, the lover and the warrior. When these are harmonized, your presence becomes transformative. You no longer need to dominate. Your balance itself exerts influence. Others feel drawn to you because you carry what they lack: wholeness. The fragmented mind is magnetized by the integrated one. Psychologically, this shift marks the movement from manipulation to magnetism. Manipulation requires effort. It is an external act. Magnetism requires awareness. It is an internal alignment. When your thoughts, emotions, and instincts move in harmony, your energy becomes coherent, and coherence draws others like gravity. They feel safe in your strength, inspired by your stillness, challenged by your mystery. You no longer seduce by design. You simply embody what others long to experience within themselves. Sexually, this wholeness manifests as a profound polarity, a controlled intensity. You no longer seek conquest. You offer experience. Your presence evokes surrender, not submission, because it is rooted in consciousness rather than need. In your stillness, she feels both held and undone. Your darkness no longer threatens her. It calls her deeper into herself. The ultimate seduction is not the taking of another's body, but the awakening of their soul through the resonance of your own integration. And yet, this path is not without danger. To integrate your shadow is to meet every part of yourself you once denied: the insecurity, the hunger, the rage, the longing. You must walk through them without becoming them. Many men attempt this path and lose themselves in ego, mistaking control for confidence and cruelty for strength. True power is not cold, it is aware. It does not destroy, it transforms. It does not demand, it reveals. Philosophically, we can say that the highest form of dark psychology is self-transcendence. It begins in manipulation, but ends in mastery, not of others, but of the self. You learn to use your darkness as a tool, not as a weapon. You use tension to awaken depth, not dependency. You use mystery not to hide, but to reflect. You move through life as both observer and participant, aware that every interaction is an exchange of energy that teaches you more about who you are. When you reach this level, the game dissolves. You no longer seek to make any woman obsess over you. You simply live as the embodiment of the forces that naturally inspire obsession: presence, awareness, and mystery. You become a psychological mirror in motion, awakening in others the parts of themselves that sleep. And that is the highest purpose of this power, not to enslave the mind, but to awaken it, because in the end the dirtiest method is not deception, it is consciousness. Consciousness that sees through illusion, that wields desire as an instrument of truth, that turns manipulation into transformation. The one who understands this no longer plays with darkness. He becomes its light. And so if there is one truth to leave you with, it is this: before you seek to control another's heart, conquer your own. For when you master yourself, you will discover that every soul already bends toward the gravity of your being.